Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation, How to Identify a Man That is a Loser. Let's get into it. So number one, we're going to have the echo chamber effect. Now, this is essentially made manifest with the absence of original thought. Okay, and so many of these loser men, they have an influencer dependency, okay, relying entirely on figures like Andrew Tate or clavicular, however you say his name, for a worldview and for a perspective, right? They don't really have an original perspective or an original opinion about something. For example, if you were to go to one of these loser men and ask them, for example, what is your opinion on Drake versus Kendrick Lamar? Unless there's an opinion that their favorite influencer has told them, they're not going to really be able to tell you that much because they don't have any original thought, quite frankly, about anything. They just reiterate what their favorite influencer has said. Okay, this also leads to a lack of nuance, seeing the world through a pre-packaged lens rather than personal experience. Okay, so whenever they are trying to empathize with people, which many of these loser men are actually very incapable of empathy, they see the world through a pre-packaged perspective. And so, for example, let's say there's an individual that's struggling to buy groceries and they're complaining about how they're not going to be able to feed their kids. Instead of actually really maybe asking more questions, seeing a little bit more context, they'll present a pre-packaged perspective, which is life isn't fair, get over it, work hard, and you'll like, it's just like very generic stuff. Like it's not deep, it's not introspective, it's just pre-packaged empathy, if you will, if you even want to call it that. And lastly, it's regurgitated opinions. Okay, arguments and beliefs are often carbon copies of viral content rather than original insights. Okay, and so this kind of goes back to the influencer dependency and the lack of nuance, where it could be word for word, bar for bar. Like they will just always present a worldview that is just a copy of what someone else has already said. But then it's like if you ask them, why do you think that? They're not going to really be able to tell you. Like if you ask them what's your opinion, they'll tell you what their favorite influencer said. But if you ask them why, they'll start to stutter because they really don't know why they think that. They don't know why they believe that. They just are reiterating what they've consumed. Next, we have dysfunctional views on gender. Okay, we have to talk about this, the misogyny and the submission paradox. Many of these loser men, they have this traditional shield that they use. They use traditional values as a cover for a lack of romantic success or social skills. Okay, they look at women as these objects that are simply supposed to do what they're told and be a good woman and cook me dinner. And it's like anything that comes into the conversation about communication and respect and love and care, they don't really know how to navigate those conversations. It's sort of, I'm the man, I'm in charge, you're the woman, you're submissive. And it's just, it can often lead into this misogynistic mentality. And many of these loser men, they'll even overtly tell you that they're misogynistic if you let them talk long enough. Okay, this also leads to the submission demand. Okay, expecting women to be submissive without providing the leadership or stability that justifies it. Many of these men, as I'm categorizing them as losers, why on earth would a woman submit to a loser? Don't get it twisted, guys. If you're watching this and you're a man, there are women that want to submit to a man that actually gives her a reason to do so. If you're a strong leader, you're a strong communicator, you lead her, you do not rule over her, and you actually make her feel safe and protected, she has no problem submitting to you. But what happens is that you have a lot of men that just demand submission without even providing any type of leadership or stability. And then they wonder why women don't respect them. And lastly, we have internalized scripts. Okay, speech patterns and views on women that are noticeably scripted from internet subcultures. Okay, I'm not a social scientist, but I really do think the rise of the internet, the rise of Reddit and YouTube and Twitch and Kick, where all of these influencers are now noticeably shaping the perspectives and opinions of the masses, it has actually led to the rise of losers. Okay, because many of these views that are being reiterated on the internet are not sound. Okay, they're not wise, they're actually stupid. But many of these men, because again of the lack of original thought, they have no wisdom, and so they just end up partaking in the delusional and again stupid rhetoric that is being facilitated on the internet. Next, we have radicalization and group identity. Okay, the intersection of misery and racism. Okay, many of these loser men, they will externalize their own failures. Okay, they will adopt racist ideologies directed at Black, Asian, or Hispanic groups as a way to feel superior despite personal failures. And I actually forgot to mention as well, there is a large and growing sect of African American racists who are then directing hatred towards white people and Asian people and Hispanic people, all because they themselves have not lived up to their own expectations. Okay, this does not apply to a particular group or race. This applies to any man, because any man from any culture or background can be a loser. Okay, and they also will tend to have an obsession with extremism. Okay, they will look up to genocidal figures. I won't say certain names because I don't want this video or this channel to be demonetized, but you know the path that I'm going down, right? People that have done some pretty horrific things, particularly throughout the mid 20th century, and these losers will almost idolize them and sympathize with them and say, okay, they weren't that bad, were they? Okay, they have this tendency to idolize historical losers or white supremacist figures. And lastly, this kind of just leads me to losers recognizing losers. Okay, these men, they find community in hate groups because they lack the merit to succeed in mainstream society. Okay, I'm not saying that every individual who has achieved mainstream success isn't a racist, but there is a reason why studies have shown over and over that people that tend to be racist, that have racist worldviews, tend to be uneducated and poor. Because the reality is that if I have $100 million and I'm black or Asian or Hispanic, I don't have time to be racist towards somebody else. I'm rich. I'm living nice. I'm living a nice life, right? But when you're poor, you're broke, you don't really have anything going for yourself, then of course it allows a door to be open where all of a sudden you start watching extremist content and you start calling other people racial slurs and all of these different things because you yourself feel as if you haven't achieved anything, that you lack the merit. Okay, and so it can lead to them becoming losers and ultimately recognizing other losers. Next, we have the imitation game, okay? The hustle culture facade. Okay, many of these loser men, they have a persona mimicry. You can see this is sort of like a general theme here. They're always imitating people, attempting to act like a miniature version of their favorite influencer. Okay, you have all of these dudes trying to imitate Andrew Tate, that they're trying to imitate some influencer trying to sell you a crypto coin. It's just like, be yourself. And I don't want to sound generic, but literally, like, why are you trying to develop an identity based around another human being who, quite frankly, doesn't even know you exist? Okay, this will often lead to the course trap. Now, all of a sudden, these loser men trying to imitate somebody else are now selling low quality Instagram success courses or crypto schemes as a shortcut to actual achievement, saying things like, DM me this word and I'll send you my 5-page ebook on how to level up. And it's just like, bro, like, what? Okay, and this is often because of a lack of substance. Okay, focusing on the aesthetic of a successful man without doing the actual work required to become one. These are the men who think that just because they put on a quarter zip, just because they're wearing dress pants and loafers, that this makes them successful. They are simply adopting the aesthetic. Look, I'll never forget, I was watching this clip of this man, and he was saying that whenever you're in a negotiating room and there's a guy in the back with a t-shirt on, he's probably the billionaire. And the men that are wearing the tailored suits are probably just millionaires. But the man who isn't focused on the aesthetic, but is actually doing the work, that's the man that's actually successful. So many of these loser men, it's that lack of substance. Okay, they feel as if they have to embody the Instagram aesthetic or the clothing aesthetic of a successful man. But the reality is that they lack the substance. They don't really have what it takes. All right, and lastly, we have emotional suppression and inauthenticity. Okay, the scripted persona versus genuine interaction. Many of these loser men, they have an emotional insecurity. They have a fundamental inability to be genuine, often rooted in suppressed trauma or a fear of vulnerability. Okay, so oftentimes the way that they speak, it just feels scripted. It feels fake, the fake vibe. Interactions feel performative or scripted rather than human. And many of these loser men, they use judgment as a shield. They use ridicule to mask their own insecurities. And this is made manifest by mocking others' success or interests to feel superior, right? And so it's sort of like they're talking about something, let's say something that's a little bit more niche specific, and someone at the table doesn't know what's being spoken about, they'll try to mock that individual and say, you don't know this? Like, I can't believe this. I thought this was common knowledge. They're using judgment as a shield, as a form of ridicule, because maybe there's things that they themselves are ignorant about. And so now that they finally have found something that they themselves are a little bit more knowledgeable about, this makes them feel superior.